The champagne was still cold in my hand when I noticed my boss standing completely alone on the hotel balcony, gripping the iron railing like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Inside the Fairmont Copley Plaza, the firm's 25th anniversary gala was in full swing. The ballroom glittered beneath crystal chandeliers and the sound of a live jazz quartet. Senior partners were laughing with clients. Junior associates were laughing at the partners' jokes. Someone had already ordered a third round of scotch from the open bar, and the speeches hadn't even started yet. By any measure, the evening was exactly what the firm's events committee had planned it to be: elegant, celebratory, carefully controlled. But out there, through the glass doors, I'd stepped through just to catch a breath of cool air. Lydia Farren looked like someone had just told her the building was on fire. I almost turned around. Lydia Farren was the kind of person you didn't approach uninvited. As senior partner and head of litigation at Stratton Pike, she had a reputation that preceded her into every room she entered. The other associates called her the Hammer, not out of disrespect, but because that's exactly what she was: precise, absolute. Relentive attorney who could dismantle a witness on cross-examination in 4 questions and never raise her voice once. Opposing counsel had been known to request settlement conferences the moment her name appeared on a case caption. She had a quote from a federal judge framed on her office wall: "Counsel is prepared," 3 words like a medal. She'd earned it at 33 and kept the frame ever since. In 18 months working under her, I had never once seen her uncertain about anything. But that night, something was wrong. Before I go any further, I want to ask something of you. If this story connects with something you've lived through, if you've ever worked for someone who felt impossible to reach, or poured everything into a place that never seemed to seat you, please share this video with someone who needs to hear it today. Like it, leave a comment, subscribe to Empathy Stories for more. The stories that matter most are the ones we come the closest to never telling. My name is Elliot Payne. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, in a 2-bedroom house on the west side where nobody had gone to law school and nobody particularly expected me to. My father drove a school bus for 23 years. My mother worked the early shift at a commercial laundry, pressing hotel linens she'd never sleep on. They weren't people who talked much about ambition or trajectory or making something of yourself. They talked about showing up on time, keeping your word, and not giving anyone a reason to doubt you. I carried those 3 things with me into every classroom I sat in, every bar exam study session, every summer internship that paid next to nothing and demanded everything I had. When I landed a position at Stratton Pike right out of Suffolk Law, it felt like stepping off a long bus ride into somewhere I had no real business being. The firm handled major pharmaceutical litigation, high-stakes corporate defense, occasionally cases that made the Globe's front page. Their offices on the 32nd floor of 1 Federal Street looked out over the whole city. The coffee was better than any restaurant I'd eaten at in my life, and the work was harder than anything I had imagined. Lydia Farren made it harder. She reviewed every brief I submitted with the kind of attention most people reserve for documents they're about to sign in blood. Her edits came back in red ink, actual red ink, from a fountain pen she kept in the center drawer of her desk. And sometimes the margins were so dense with corrections that my original text felt like an afterthought. She never said good morning unless you said it first, and even then you might get a nod instead of words. She never said good work. When I presented research in her case strategy meetings, she would sit without any readable expression on her face. And then she would ask 3 questions. Always 3. And each one was designed to find the exact crack in my reasoning. She always found one. After 6 months, I told myself she was simply rigorous. After 12 months, I told myself she just didn't like me. At the 14-month mark, she sent back a brief I had spent 11 days writing, and the cover page had exactly 7 words in red across the top. Start over. The argument is not here, no explanation, no guidance on where the argument meeting actually was or how to find it. Just the instruction to erase everything and begin again. I sat with those 7 words for a long time that evening, in a chair in my office that squeaked when I shifted my weight, listening to the building empty out around me floor by floor. After 18 months, on a Thursday afternoon in October, I opened a blank document on my laptop and I started writing my resignation. I didn't finish it. I got a text from the office coordinator reminding me the firm's shuttle to the Fairmont left at 6:30, and I scrambled to change out of the shirt I'd been wearing since 7 in the morning and get myself downstairs. In my rush, I left the laptop open on my desk with the screen still lit. I didn't understand what that meant until later that night. The Fairmont Ballroom was everything you'd expect from a firm that had billed north of $40 million the previous fiscal year. Round tables in white linen, centerpieces of white roses and birch branches that someone had arranged to look effortless and charged $600 a table for. The managing partner, Douglas Stratton, no relation to the firm's founder, which he mentioned every opportunity he found, was working the room with the practiced ease of a man who had been doing this for 3 decades and genuinely enjoyed it. He clapped associates on the shoulder and laughed at his own stories, and made everyone feel briefly like they were his favorite person in the room. I found a spot near the bar and did what junior associates do at these events. Stood close enough to look engaged and far enough from the senior partners to avoid being asked questions I couldn't answer. Lydia arrived late. She always arrived late to social functions, not carelessly but deliberately, in the way that people treat their time like a finite resource they're unwilling to spend standing around waiting for dinner. When she came through the ballroom doors, she was wearing a dark navy blazer over a silk blouse, understated in a room full of people who had tried very hard to be noticed. She didn't scan the crowd for familiar faces. She moved with the quiet efficiency of someone who already knows the layout of every space they'll ever enter. I watched her exchange a few words with Stratton, then a few more with a partner from the corporate group, then a brief conversation with one of the pharmaceutical clients whose cases she managed. Each exchange was courteous and contained, and with each one the intervals between them grew longer, until she was drifting gradually toward the far edge of the room, the way a ship does when it's losing wind, slowly and without announcement. She slipped through the glass doors to the balcony, and not one person followed her. I don't fully know what made me do it. Honestly, I'd had 1.5 glasses of wine, which for me is roughly 1.25 glasses more than it takes to do something I'll reconsider in the morning. But I also think, and I've thought about this many times since, that something in the specific way she moved toward those doors looked familiar. The way you walk, when you're trying to make sure no one sees that your legs are slightly unsteady. I pushed through the doors. The October air landed on me like cold water. Boston at night in the fall has its own particular smell. Wood smoke, river water, something electric in the air, like the city is perpetually on the verge of something large. The balcony overlooked Copley Square, and the amber light of the Boston Public Library glowed across the plaza below like something out of an old photograph. Lydia was standing at the far end of the railing with her back to me. For a moment I genuinely considered retreating. This was not my territory. She had never invited familiarity. She had never once suggested that our relationship was anything other than senior partner and junior associate, and in 18 months I had not crossed that line. But her knuckles where they gripped the iron were white in the city light, and her shoulders, her always composed, always controlled shoulders, were doing something I had never witnessed in a 1.5 years of 7 a.m. briefings and late-night document reviews. They were shaking. I said her name. She turned, and for a fraction of a second, before the professional composure reconstructed itself, I saw something in her face I had never seen there before. Not impatience, not irritation, something closer to the expression a person has when they've been holding something too heavy for too long and have just run out of places to set it down. Payne, she said, using my last name the way she always did. You should go back inside. So should you, I said. It came out quieter than I intended. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she turned back to the railing. I walked over and stood beside her, close enough that we were both leaning on the same section of iron bar, both looking out over the lit-up square below. The silence stretched. I expected her to fill it or dismiss it. She did neither. After a while, she said, Kessler Pharmaceutical called at 4:30 this afternoon. I knew that name well. Kessler was the department's anchor client, a relationship the firm had maintained for a decade. The pending product liability case had been Lydia's personal project for the better part of 2 years. She'd built the entire trial strategy herself, overseen every deposition, drafted the expert witness framework from scratch. A trial date had been set since the previous January. They're moving the litigation to Brecker and Howell, she said. in a voice that had been stripped of everything except the fact itself. Effective immediately. They want the full case file transferred by end of month. I didn't respond. There was nothing useful to say. 2 years, she said, and her voice caught slightly on the second word in a way I don't think she planned. 2 years of depositions, expert witnesses, motions practice, 3 amended complaints. A trial strategy I built from the beginning. She exhaled slowly, deliberately. They moved because one of their board members plays golf with Brecker's managing partner. That's it. That's the whole reason. She said it without bitterness, which somehow made it worse than if she had. Does Stratton know? I asked. He found out about an hour before the gala. Her tone was flat. He decided we'd address it in the morning. He didn't want to disrupt the event. The band inside had shifted to a slower number, something with a piano melody I almost recognized, the kind of standard that gets played at events like this, because it's soft enough that people can talk over it. Through the glass, I could see couples moving onto the small dance floor that had been cleared near the stage. The light inside was warm and golden. From out here, the whole scene looked like something from a world that was operating on completely different rules than the one we were standing in. Neither of us spoke for a while. The city hummed below us. Then I said, "Do you want to go back in?" She looked at me in a way I couldn't read clearly. "Together," I said. She held the look for another moment. Then she pushed herself off the railing and straightened her blazer, and she nodded. Just once. And we went back inside. Because the dance floor was there and the music was still playing and we were both standing at its edge, I offered my hand. I have no adequate explanation for this. Some combination of instinct and poor judgment and the specific quality of what I'd just witnessed on that balcony. A quality that made her seem, for the first time since I'd met her, like someone who needed to be stood beside rather than stood apart from. She looked at my hand. Then she took it. We were not particularly graceful dancers. I will say that plainly. I have 2 left feet and a law school education, which is not a combination that produces fluid movement. She was better than I was, but guarded about it, careful, as if grace was something she'd decided not to display at this particular moment. So we moved slowly and somewhat cautiously to the music, and the people around us registered mild surprise and were polite enough not to stare. "I used to be good at this," she said quietly after a moment. "Dancing." "You're not bad now," I said. She looked up with the very beginning of something that might become a smile. "You're a terrible liar, Payne." "I'm a lawyer," I said. "I'm not supposed to be a convincing one." And then she did smile, briefly, closed off but real, and it was so unexpected that I nearly lost track of which foot I was supposed to be moving. We danced without speaking for a while. The music was slow and forgiving of mistakes, and in the space that opened up when we stopped filling it with professional distance, something else came in. I became aware that her hand in mine was trembling slightly. Not the large trembling I'd seen on the balcony that had been grief and shock, visible and real. This was something smaller and more private, the kind of shaking that lives in a person when they've kept everything clenched for too long, and the muscles are finally starting to give. "I've been doing this for 26 years, she said almost to herself. 26 years, and I still don't know how to lose something gracefully. I thought about what to say. I thought about the blank document I'd opened on my laptop that afternoon. I thought about 7 words in red ink on a cover page. Start over. The argument is not here. I thought about the specific silence of an office at 11 o'clock at night when everyone else has gone home, and you're still there because you believe, somewhere underneath the exhaustion, that there must be something in you worth finding. "Can I tell you something?" I said. She waited. "Before I came tonight," I said, "I started writing a resignation letter." Her hand went still in mine. "I didn't finish it. I had to leave for the shuttle and I left it open on my screen. I kept my voice level. I've been thinking about it for a while. I came in this morning and thought, today I'll actually write it." I paused. "I believed that I wasn't what you needed, that whatever you were looking for, I didn't have it. Every brief you sent back. Every meeting where I felt like I was one wrong sentence away from being shown out of the conference room. After 18 months of that, I stopped being able to hear what was actually being said." The song ended. Another one began. We kept moving. "I know about the letter," she said. I went still. Paulette walked into your office to drop off the Marcus Biotech deposition summary, she said. Paulette was her paralegal, efficient, observant, fiercely loyal to Lydia, in the way that people are loyal to someone they've watched work for years and deeply respect. She texted me from the elevator. Lydia's voice was even and careful, the way you speak when you're carrying something that could spill. I read the text at a red light on Boylston Street on my way here. Lydia. That's why I arrived late, she said. I sat in the car outside this hotel for 11 minutes, trying to decide whether to come in at all. The ballroom moved around us. Someone laughed at something across the room. Glass clinked somewhere behind me. I owe you something I don't think I've ever said to any associate in 26 years of practice, she said. She was looking past my shoulder with the focused distance of someone choosing their words with absolute precision before speaking them. The reason I am harder on you than anyone else in that department is not because I believe you are inadequate. It is because you are the only person in that room I actually believe in. I didn't say anything. The briefs I send back covered in notes. I don't do that for everyone. Most associates get a pass-through and a form comment because that's all their work warrants. You get red ink because I'm actually reading what you wrote, because it matters what you write. She looked at me directly, and her eyes held something I had never seen in them before. Something open and undefended, like a door that had been locked a very long time and had just been found to have a key. I have been building a trial attorney. I thought I was being obvious about it. You weren't, I said. No, she said. I understand that now. That's one of the things I'm trying to learn. She exhaled. I came up being taught that if you tell people they're doing well, they stop working to improve. My first mentor drilled that into me. I followed it for 26 years. It's the single worst piece of professional advice I have ever taken. We were barely moving anymore. More a slow sway than a dance, in the way dancing becomes when the movement has stopped being the point. When Paulette's text came through, she said, and her voice dropped to something that I had to lean slightly forward to catch, I sat in that car, and I realized I had spent 18 months teaching you everything I know about litigation without ever once making certain you understood why I was doing it, what it meant that I was doing it and not leaving you to someone else. She paused. I need you to understand that that's on me, not on you. The room felt very far away from where we were standing. I'm not asking you to stay because the department needs warm bodies, she said. We can hire associates. That's not a problem that worries me. She met my eyes again, squarely, the way she looked at a jury when she needed them to understand that the next sentence was the one that mattered. I'm asking you to stay because I've seen a great many young attorneys over the years. I can count on one hand the ones who walked into this work and understood, actually understood, not as a technique but as instinct, that a courtroom is not about the law. It's about the human beings in the room, the story underneath the case. The person across the table who is also trying to hold something together. She paused. You have that. I cannot teach it. I have never been able to teach it. I can only work with it once it's there, and it is there in you. She stopped, as if she had said more than she'd planned to say, and was taking stock of what was left. So I'm asking, she said quietly, in a voice that had none of the hammer in it, and all of the person who had driven here tonight, and sat in a car for 11 minutes rather than walk into a room without knowing this conversation was still possible. So, please don't go. Not because of the Kessler situation. We'll survive that. We've survived worse, not because of tonight. I'm asking because I don't want to find myself across a courtroom from you 10 years from now and know that I am the reason you left before you got where you were always going. I have turned those words over in my mind many times since that October night. There were things I could have said. That 18 months was a long time to wait to hear any of it. That the culture of silence and correction that passed for mentorship in places like Stratton Pike cost people something real. Something that didn't always grow back. That I had every right to walk away and build something somewhere else. All of those things would have been fair. But I looked at her. This woman who had built something extraordinary over 26 years of relentless work. Who had made herself indispensable in a field that did not naturally accommodate people like her, who had driven to a hotel tonight and sat in the dark in the parking garage, trying to find the words for something she had never once been taught to say. And I understood what was actually in front of me. Not a senior partner, not the hammer, not the most feared cross-examiner in the Boston litigation bar. A person holding on to something she had spent a long time building and asking me, very quietly, not to be the reason it broke. "I'm not going anywhere," I said. She nodded once, quickly, in the way people nod when they are relieved and won't admit it openly. Then the song ended, and we stepped apart, and the room came back around us, and that was that. Except it wasn't. The months that followed were the hardest period our department had known in years. Losing Kessler sent a tremor through the whole litigation group. 2 associates left voluntarily in November. A senior partner took accelerated retirement in January. The firm restructured the team, eliminated 2 of our administrative positions, and moved several ongoing cases to outside counsel to reduce costs. The hallway conversations shifted from cautious optimism to careful pragmatism. Rainmakers called in favors. New business development meetings filled the Tuesday calendar from morning to evening. But in the middle of that restructuring, Lydia Farren changed. Not dramatically, not overnight. The red ink didn't disappear from my briefs. She was still the most demanding editor I had ever worked for, and she remained that way. The case meeting still challenged me in ways that made me want to put my head through the conference table. But after the night at the Fairmont, there were other things too. She started ending strategy sessions with a genuine question, not a trap, but a real one. "What's your instinct here? What does your gut tell you about the jury?" She stopped eating lunch alone at her desk and would occasionally appear in the break room, standing with a coffee she'd poured from the firm's terrible machine, asking associates what they were working on and actually listening to what they said. One Tuesday morning, she walked into my office unannounced, set a deposition transcript on my desk, and said, "This is his masterclass in how not to do it. Read it before noon and tell me what you'd do differently." When I told her, she sat in the chair across from my desk and listened without interrupting for 11 minutes. In the culture of that firm, that was enormous. A year after the gala, Lydia gave me first chair on a commercial litigation case, a business dispute with 8 figures in potential damages and a client who had specifically requested trial, not settlement. I had never led a case before, not alone. The week before opening statements, I didn't sleep more than 4 hours a night. I rewrote my opening 3 times. The morning of day 1, she caught me in the elevator, just the 2 of us, 26 floors, and she said 3 words, "You're ready, Payne." And then the doors opened, and she walked toward the conference room, and I walked toward the parking garage, and the courthouse beyond it. We won a unanimous verdict in 4 hours of deliberation. 2 years after the Fairmont, Stratton Pike's litigation department has not only recovered from the Kessler loss, it has grown beyond it. We brought in 4 substantial new clients in the past 18 months, including a regional hospital system and a tech company, whose litigation needs kept 4 of our associates busy through most of the spring. Lydia led a strategic push into healthcare liability work that has already been covered in 2 trade publications. She is still demanding, still one of the most precise and difficult minds I have ever had the privilege of working alongside. Still the attorney that opposing counsel calls their colleagues about before agreeing to go to trial against her. But now the associates in our department know something else about her too. They know she shows up. They know she is in your corner in ways she does not announce and does not expect thanks for. They know that the most important thing she ever does is read your work, actually read it, actually engage with it, and that the red ink means she thinks you can do better, and she is right. She gave a speech at last year's gala, the firm's 26th anniversary, held at the same hotel, and at the end she set her notes aside and said something I have never heard a senior partner say at one of these events in all my time there. She said, "The law is not a solo practice, regardless of what the nameplate on your door says. The best trial attorneys I have known in 27 years were the ones who understood that a courtroom is a room full of human beings, and that the lawyer who actually listens, who hears what is behind the words and not just the words themselves, is almost always the one who goes home with the verdict." I was standing near the back of the room. I caught her eye across the ballroom when she said it. She gave me the smallest nod I have ever received from anyone, and it was more than enough. Before you close this video, I want to ask you something. If you've ever had someone in your professional life who challenged you in ways that felt indistinguishable from punishment, a boss who pushed hard and said nothing, a mentor whose belief in you was buried so deep you couldn't find it, I want to know what happened. Did you stay? Did you leave? What would you have needed to hear, and when? Leave it in the comments. The stories you share here reach people who are sitting with that same question right now, on a Thursday afternoon, in a quiet office, staring at a blank document on their screen. If this story moved you, please like this video and share it with someone who is holding on to something they're not sure is worth holding. Subscribe to Empathy Stories for more. We look for the moments that change things. The ones that happen on hotel balconies and in parking garages and in elevator doors with 26 floors between you and where you need to be. Because sometimes the whole story turns on one person who decides to step through the glass door instead of away from it.